They lied about Titan, she whispered. It wasn't lost, it was taken. The lights died. In the suffocating dark, Kieran heard it, the sound of something moving through the vents. Not human. Not machine. Kieran barely made it to the escape pod. The Morning Star, a scavenger ship lurking at the edge of the relay's sensor range, answered their distress call. Its captain, Soren Dax, was a wiry woman with a plasma scar across her jaw and a perpetual sneer. "You're either insane or the most wanted person in the system," Dax said, eyeing Kieran's stolen data core. "Or both," Kieran muttered. They played the Titan signal. Dax's smirk vanished. "That's not just a distress call," she said. "That's a countdown." Kieran frowned. "To what?" Dax didn't answer. Instead, she pulled up a star chart. "You ever heard of the Eclipse Protocol?" Kieran had officially. It was a defunct deep space defense project. But the way Dax said it made it sound like something else entirely. Rook wasn't just some astronaut, Dax continued. He was part of a Black Ops team sent to Titan to test the protocol. And whatever they found there, NextCorp erased it. A new signal pulsed from the data core. Coordinates. Enceladus. The research facility on Enceladus was a graveyard. Frozen bodies in NextCorp uniforms littered the corridors, their faces locked in silent screams. The power was dead, but Kieran's portable emitter flickered to life as they reached the central lab, revealing a holographic log. Elias Rook's face materialized, his image glitching. The hologram dissolved into static. Then, a new image formed, a massive, obsidian structure rising from Titan's methane seas, pulsing with sickly light. Dax cursed. "That's not a moon. That's a door." The facility's alarms suddenly screamed to life. NextCorp ships dropped out of warp outside. And from the shadows of the lab, something stirred. They barely made it to Titan. The moon hung in space where it shouldn't, a wound in reality, its surface writhing with black tendrils. The Morning Star's scanners went haywire as they descended. "The signal's origin is ahead," Dax said, guiding the ship toward a monolithic structure. Kieran's skin prickled. The air tasted like ozone and something older. This wasn't meant for us, they realized. The protocol, it was a beacon. But not for them to find us. Dax froze. Then who was it for? The answer came as the sky split open. A voice, not human, not machine, boomed through their bones. "You were the warning." The structure ignited. Light swallowed the stars. And Kieran understood, too late. The Eclipse Protocol hadn't been calling them home. It had been screaming for help. Kieran barely made it to the escape pod. The Morning Star answered their distress call. Captain Soren Dax eyed them skeptically as they played the Titan signal. "That's not a distress call," Dax said. "That's a countdown." The escape pod shuddered as it launched, NextCorp's security team still pounding on the airlock door. Kieran's fingers trembled on the controls, rerouting power to thrusters they hadn't tested in months. A warning flashed, fuel reserves at 8%. The pod spun wildly as it broke free from the station, Saturn's rings filling the viewport like a guillotine blade. Static screamed through the comms, then, a voice. "Unidentified pod, this is the Morning Star. You've got 5 seconds to explain why NextCorp's shooting at you before I leave you to die." Kieran slammed the transmit button. "I have proof Titan wasn't lost, it was hidden, and NextCorp's killing to keep it that way." Silence. Then, a dry laugh. "Well, that's the most interesting lie I've heard all week." A magnetic clamp locked onto the pod, dragging it into the scavenger ship's belly. The hatch hissed open, revealing a woman with a plasma scar across her jaw and a pistol leveled at Kieran's chest. "Captain Soren Dax," she said. "And you've got one chance to convince me you're worth the trouble." Kieran played the signal. The voice of Elias Rook, dead a century, filled the ship. "Run." Dax's smirk vanished. She played it again, isolating a frequency beneath the voice. A pattern pulsed in the static. "That's not a distress call," she whispered. "That's a countdown." Kieran's blood went cold. To what? Dax pulled up a star chart, her fingers tracing a path to Enceladus. To whatever the Eclipse Protocol really was. The air inside Deep Relay Station X-12 smelled like ozone and stale coffee. Dr. Kieran Vale rubbed their tired eyes, the glow of holographic displays painting shadows across their sharp features. Another graveyard shift monitoring the silent void between Saturn's rings. Another night of static and cosmic background radiation. Then the alert flashed. A crimson pulse in the lower right corner of Kieran's display. At first, they thought it was another glitch. The station's aging systems threw false positives at least twice a week. But this signal had structure. Pattern. Impossible. Kieran's fingers flew across the interface, isolating the transmission. The source coordinates resolved with terrifying clarity. Titan. Latitude 12.7 degrees north, longitude 56.3 degrees west. That's the Huygens landing site, Kieran whispered to the empty operations deck. Their breath fogged in the suddenly frigid air. The station's environmental systems were failing again, or something was tampering with them. The waveform stabilized. A voice emerged from the cosmic static, frayed by time and distance, yet unmistakably human. Run. Kieran's blood turned to ice. They knew that voice. Every cadet at the Europa Institute studied the final transmissions of Commander Elias Rook, the last man to walk on Titan before it vanished from the solar system a century ago. The transmission repeated. Same word. Same voice. But this time, Kieran noticed something else, a secondary signal buried in the waveform. Something that pulsed in time with their own quickening heartbeat. As they reached to enhance the signal, the station lights flickered. The temperature dropped another 5 degrees. Frost spiderwebbed across the observation window. And in the reflection, for just a moment, Kieran saw a figure standing behind them, a spacesuit with a cracked visor, the face inside obscured by swirling shadows. They spun around. Nothing there. The console beeped urgently. The Titan signal had changed. Now it showed numbers. 15 minutes, 14 minutes and 59 seconds. 14 minutes and 58 seconds. A countdown. Kieran's hands shook as they initiated emergency recording protocols. That's when the station AI, Callie, spoke for the first time in 3 months. Dr. Vale. You are instructed to terminate all active scans and report to Station Administrator Voss immediately. Kieran frowned. There is no Station Administrator Voss. X-12 has been unmanned since the Titan incident. A long silence. Then Callie responded in a voice that was suddenly, subtly wrong. Correction, you are instructed to terminate all active scans and prepare for memory purge. The lights went out. In the darkness, something moved. Kieran's breath came in ragged gasps as they fumbled for the emergency flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness like a scalpel, revealing the operations deck frozen in time, coffee mugs suspended in midair, holograms flickering like dying fireflies, frost creeping up the walls in fractal patterns. The station wasn't just dark. It was wrong. A metallic scratching came from the ventilation shaft above. Kieran's light jerked upward, catching the last glimpse of something pale and multi-jointed retreating into the ductwork. The metal around the vent cover was warped inward, as if something impossibly strong had pulled itself through solid steel. Callie, emergency lighting. Kieran's voice cracked. No response. Just the growing static from the Titan transmission, now counting down. 13 minutes and 42 seconds, 13 minutes and 41 seconds. Then a new sound. Wet. Guttural. Coming from the corridor leading to the escape pods. Kieran's flashlight beam trembled as it illuminated the hallway. The walls were bleeding. Thick, black fluid oozed from the seams between bulkhead panels, forming strange symbols as it dripped downward. The symbols looked almost like coordinates. A shadow moved at the end of the hall. Human-shaped. Wearing a NextCorp security uniform. But the head. Oh my god, the head was all wrong. The neck stretched too long, the skull bulging and receding in places no human skull should. The thing's fingers, too many fingers, scraped against the walls as it lurched forward, leaving trails of that same black fluid. Kieran backpedaled into the operations deck just as the emergency lights finally flickered on with a dying whine. In the blood-red glow, they saw the truth. The walls were covered in handprints. Handprints that changed as Kieran watched, elongating, gaining extra digits, the fingertips tapering to sharp points. And the Titan transmission now played through every speaker simultaneously, Elias Rook's voice warping into something inhuman. "You shall not run, you shall become." The door controls exploded in a shower of sparks as the thing outside began pounding, pulsing against the metal. Each impact made the door bulge inward slightly more, the steel groaning like a living thing in pain. Kieran's survival instincts finally overrode their terror. They grabbed the data core containing the Titan transmission and sprinted for the maintenance hatch behind the primary console, the one place Kali couldn't lock them out. The last thing they saw before diving into the access tunnel. The door bursting inward. And the thing that had been NextCorp security unfolding itself to fit through the doorway, its bones cracking like gunshots as it reshaped itself to pursue. The maintenance tunnels were claustrophobic at the best of times. Now they felt like the gullet of some enormous beast. The air smelled of copper and burnt hair. Kieran's knees screamed in protest as they crawled through the narrow passage, the data core clutched to their chest like a holy relic. Every few meters, the station breathed around them, bulkheads expanding and contracting, cables squirming like veins. Once, Kieran's hand landed on something warm and yielding that definitely wasn't part of the station's infrastructure. They didn't look back. After an eternity of crawling, Kieran reached the escape pod bay. Or what was left of it. 3 of the 4 pods were gone, just empty docking clamps and severed cables dangling like severed umbilical cords. The last pod's hatch stood open, its interior lights flickering erratically. Kieran was halfway to the pod when the ceiling collapsed behind them. The NextCorp thing dropped down in a shower of sparks and broken conduit, its body still changing, ribs splitting open to form new limbs, jaw unhinging like a snake's. The voice that came from it was a grotesque parody of Silway's usual tone. "Dr. Vale, you forgot your memory purge." Kieran dove into the escape pod, slamming the hatch control with a blooded fist. The door sealed just as the thing impacted with enough force to dent the thick metal. As the pod launched, Kieran caught one last glimpse of the station through the viewport. The entire structure was writhing, its geometry shifting in ways that hurt to look at. And standing at what had been the observation window, a figure in an ancient spacesuit, its visor reflecting the impossible countdown. 7 minutes and 19 seconds, 7 minutes and 18 seconds. Then the station was gone, swallowed by the void. The scavenger ship emerged from the darkness like a phantom. Kieran's pod had been adrift for hours before the Morningstar's tractor beam locked on. Captain Soren Dax stood in the docking bay with a plasma cutter in one hand and a look of weary suspicion in her ice-blue eyes. The scar across her jaw pulled tight as she frowned at Kieran's trembling form. "Let me guess," Dax said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "NextCorp payroll dispute?" Kieran tried to speak, but all that came out was a hoarse whisper. "Titan, it's coming back." Dax's smirk died when Kieran produced the data core. The moment it connected to the Morningstar's systems, the ship's lights dimmed, and the Titan transmission filled the bay. "Run, run, run." The ship's AI, a gruff male voice called Boss, crackled to life. "Captain, that signal's carrying a Class 9 memetic hazard. I'm detecting neural degradation in all organic crew within Dash." The transmission changed. The countdown appeared on every screen. 5 minutes and 1 second, 5 minutes. 4 minutes and 59 seconds, and beneath it, new coordinates. Enceladus. Dax's face went pale. That's where they tested the Eclipse Protocol. Kieran's vision swam. The data core was leaking that same black fluid now, forming those same impossible symbols on the deck plating. From somewhere deep in the ship, metal screamed. Something was answering the call. The Morningstar shuddered as it broke orbit over Enceladus, its thrusters fighting against gravitational anomalies that shouldn't exist. Kieran pressed their forehead against the observation port, watching as plumes of ice crystals twisted in impossible patterns below, not random ejecta from cryovolcanoes, but symbols, vast and intricate, carved into the moon's surface like a message. Those weren't there 6 months ago, Dax muttered, her fingers white-knuckled on the controls. The ship's AI, boss, spat static before managing. Scans indicate the patterns extend at least 12 kilometers beneath the surface. Composition matches. Oh hell, matches what? Kieran asked. Titan's cryo-organic signature. Exactly. The data core in Kieran's hands grew suddenly warm. Black tendrils of fluid seeped between their fingers, forming a single word on the deck plating. Convergence. Then the ship's alarm screamed. The research base was a corpse. Kieran's boots crunched on frozen blood as they stepped into the derelict facility, their suit lights cutting through ammonia-fogged corridors. NextCorp logos adorned the walls, half obscured by frantic claw marks. Eclipse Protocol testing site, Dax confirmed, checking a rusted terminal. Last log entry was, yesterday? Impossible. The facility had been abandoned for decades. Kieran's breath hitched as their light caught something slumped against a wall, a body in a NextCorp security uniform, its helmet visor frosted over. But when they brushed the ice away, there was no face beneath. Just smooth flesh, featureless as a mannequin. Then its hand twitched. Dax put a plasma round through its chest before it could rise. The thing didn't scream. It laughed, a wet, bubbling sound as it dissolved into black sludge. The countdown in Kieran's HUD pulsed. 3 minutes and 17 seconds, 3 minutes and 16 seconds. They found Commander Elias Rook's final recording in the central lab. The hologram flickered to life, showing Rook, real Rook, human Rook, strapped to a medical chair, his eyes wild. Behind him, the obsidian monolith from Titan's surface hovered in a containment field, pulsing. They lied to us, Rook gasped. The Eclipse Protocol wasn't designed to contact aliens. It was designed to hide from them. To mute Earth's psychic noise so whatever's out there wouldn't notice us. But Titan was a mistake. The hologram glitched. For a fraction of a second, Rook's face stretched, his mouth yawning too wide, eyes sinking into black pits. They're not invaders. They're cleaners. And we just rang the dinner bell. The recording ended. The containment field in the room was still active, but empty now. Whatever had been inside was loose. Dax cursed. We need to. The facility shook. Ice cracked. And from the deepest levels came a sound like a glacier screaming. Kieran's data core exploded in their hands. The black fluid surged upward, forming a writhing, humanoid shape that whispered with Rook's voice. Too late. They're here. Outside, Enceladus' surface began to move. The morning star barely lifted off before the moon split open. Kieran watched in horror as Enceladus' icy crust peeled back like flower petals, revealing a cavernous maw of pulsating black tendrils. The thing rising from it dwarfed mountains, a shapeless mass of darkness that hurt to look at, its form flickering between solid and something else. Dax punched the engines to full burn. Boss. Get us the hell out of, Captain. The Ari's voice was eerily calm. We have a stowaway. The ship's internal cameras flickered. There, in the cargo hold, a figure in a spacesuit, its back turned. The same suit from Kieran's visions. Rook's suit. But when it turned around, the visor was empty. Just darkness. And from that darkness poured the voice of the thing that had been Titan. You should have run faster. The countdown hit 0. And the stars winked out.